Do we have our Skype participant? Hello.
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 Gloria?
I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our final session, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let her introduce herself. Jillian has joined us for the final conversation of the day before we close out.
Hi, Gloria. We're so happy you're here to join us live from New York.
Hi there.
So want to thank Gloria, thank everyone who's here in the room, who's been here all day. Thank our online viewers who have been with us throughout the day. I'm Jillian Sherburne, Petro's Vice President of Community. It's a pleasure to be here in Houston. I'm based in London. So again, we're just bringing this all together and all home globally. So what I do in London, helping Katie out with Petro, is focusing on our global partnerships, our marketing, and our digital programs, and that includes folks like Gloria, great partners in this whole kind of harnessing our digital power to tackle the gender parity challenge. The past year, we've also partnered with some folks such as the London Business School, the World Petroleum Council and World Petroleum Congress, Offshore Technology Conference, and the ADIPEC, the Abu Dhabi International Petroleum Exhibition and Conference. So to that end, we're really excited to have Gloria here today. We're speaking about partnerships, we're talking about parity. There's no better expert in my mind to speak to this whole parity movement, parity challenge, and how are we really starting to bridge the gap. So with that, it's my honor to tell everyone a little bit about Gloria Feldt, who again is joining us from New York. Gloria is co-founder and president of Take the Lead, which is the most comprehensive initiative to prepare, develop, inspire, and propel women to take their fair and equal share of leadership positions across all sectors by 2025. Gloria is the best-selling author of No Excuses, 9 Ways Women Can Change How We Think About Power, which is, again, an appropriate title for us here in the energy sector, along with a number of other books. She is an acclaimed expert on women, power, and authentic leadership. People magazine calls Gloria the voice of experience. Gloria is actually from West Texas, so she is a neighbor and a friend to us here in the oil field. And from young mother to navigating her way through her own career experiences, successes, and challenges, Gloria is also the former president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Federation of America, and a visionary leader, honestly, in our mind, for women's equality. She's been named by Vanity Fair as one of America's top 200 women leaders, legends, and trailblazers, Glamour's Woman of the Year, and Women's E! News 21 Leaders for the 21st Century. She's been widely quoted and published in media, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, and Huffington Post, a number of magazines, including Glamour and Elle, and she appears regularly on CNN, MSNBC, The Today Show, and The Daily Show. So again, Gloria, it's great for you to be joining us from New York.
Thank you. I'm really delighted to be here with you, and I started laughing as I came into my office here to get ready for this interview, because I realized that the coaster that I use every day for my morning coffee while I'm looking at my computer and checking my email is no more than a drilling core that my kids made sure that I had so I would never forget where we came from.
Well, I'm really glad you're here, and I have to tell you, one of the things I know we talked about this when we first initially met with you, Gloria, but one of the things that I know we pride ourselves in is bringing different perspectives and different views into the room, and that's what we're about is diversity and inclusion. And one of the things I know, as someone who's been in some quite controversial roles, we should say that, someone who's trailblazed in different times in the period of our the history of women and the history of the women's movement. You've seen a lot. You've witnessed the oil boom and bust cycles of the 20th and 21st century. So we really would like to understand if you could share some of your best practices that you learned along the way in starting fresh, innovating, because we've been talking a lot of that about that today. And obviously, a couple years ago, you got the Take the Lead Women initiative off the ground. So tell us a little bit more about that.
About Take the Lead? I would love to do that.
To move, to innovate and kind of reinvent yourself and move into this space.
Got it. Yes. Well, when I left after a 30-year wonderful career with Planned Parenthood, I sort of turned into I felt like a bowl of jelly, because I had been in a particular structure for a long time. And I will say it did take quite a while for me to figure out what I wanted to do. I had in mind that I wanted to write books. I love to write, and something I had been wanting to do for many, many years. And finally, I would have time to do that. I figured I'd make a few speeches and basically have a calmer life. And that sounded like a good idea. But apparently, that wasn't what was going to be in my future. In 2008, about the time that we thought we were going to have our first female president, if you can remember that time, and it may feel like a little bit of deja vu to many of you, Elle magazine asked me to write an article about women running for office. And it turned out that the real story was women don't run. And I was shocked. I was totally shocked. I'm telling you, after having been an advocate for women for 30 years, to discover that doors were open and we had changed the laws, but actually women were just about half as likely as men ever to even think about running for office. And if you don't run, you can't win, obviously. And the same thing is true. I found out the same dynamics were true in the world of business and, frankly, who does the laundry at home. It was all about women's own relationship with power and intentionality. And the consequence of that is that I ended up writing the book that you mentioned, No Excuses, 9 Ways Women Can Change How We Think About Power, because as somebody who's been a practical activist all my life, I didn't want to just tell women what the situation was. And I hate all those books that tell us what's wrong with us. Don't you hate those? Yeah. There's so many of them. So I wanted to say, okay, so here's the situation, and here's what we can do about it. So I created 9 leadership power tools to help women navigate these difficult waters that were holding us back. Because I found that the barriers were now internal as well as external. There still are plenty of external biases and barriers, no question about it. But there also are a lot of internal barriers that are simply learned behaviors. It's not that women are men and men are different. It is that we all grow up in the same culture and we have been socialized differently. So I wrote this book and I thought, okay, now I'm going to go write the next book. But what happened was something I had not anticipated. People started asking me to teach workshops or to create workshops doing it, using the 9 power tools. And so I started doing that. And because I'm basically a teacher at heart, that was the first job I ever had. I loved teaching. And I really enjoyed doing these workshops. And so then what else happened next? I started talking with a friend, and just to make a long story short, we decided that something needed to be done that was big, that there needed to be a whole movement, that in fact this is the moment for women to become equal in leadership across every sector. But things don't just happen on their own. You have to make them happen. And so I put together the entire comprehensive program that is Take the Lead then, and we started this as a nonprofit organization because our goal is to make our training, our mentoring, our role modeling, and our thought leadership available to women of all kinds, not just those who are already privileged to be able to receive all of these advantages. So I guess you could say it was the controversial conversation about why women weren't running for office that I was asked to write about that actually brought me to this place. And I believe controversy is our friend. I believe that it gives you a platform. If something is controversial, it means that people are paying attention, and it means that it gives you a chance to actually present your case. And that will eventually lead us into some conversation about conflict and chaos as well. But I'm going to stop there and see what other questions you might have.
Sure. Well, talking about seizing opportunities and just dealing with barriers, but also speaking to mentoring and training. Gloria, one of the key tenets of Pink Petro is we're committed to closing the gender gap. And I know this is something near and dear to your heart, the parity movement. Take the Lead is certainly a parity partner of ours. And that's something that we're, actively promoting diversity in thought, and background, and talent across the energy industry. Can you tell us a little bit more about the campaign 25 Not 95? We'd love to hear a little bit more about that and your thoughts around the year 2025.
Yes, I would love to. People often ask us, why did we pick 2025 to be the year that we want to reach leadership parity, when the World Economic Council says it will be 2095 globally. And here in the United States, the best case scenario that we've been able to come up with would have us reaching parity at in about 60 to 70 years. So the truth is that, well, first of all, 2025 just sounds good, right? It rolls off the tongue really nicely. But also, to be honest with you, if I could live another 60 or 70 years, I'd be happy to, but the odds are not real great. So I figured, well, I think 2025 is going to have to be it, because I can commit to living to see that. And I really want to see women reach their fair and equal share of leadership while I am still alive, to see it and appreciate it. And the third reason, and this is really, I think, the most important one of all, and I hope everyone is just hold on to your seats about this, because the truth is that right now we have an incredibly perfect storm in a very good way for women. A strategic inflection, I would call it, where it's a moment we have never had before. It's a moment where the business case is meeting the justice case. The business case is now telling every leader, every manager, every CEO that companies with more women in their leadership make more money. You can't get better than that. You just can't get better than that. And when the right thing to do and the smart business thing to do are one and the same, my friends, we have got a moment like we will never have again in history, and it's up to us to take this moment and propel ourselves forward. And I got to tell you, watching those two young women who were on just before me, I'm feeling really good about our potential to do that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Speaking of moments and movements, the idea around Pink Petro is as you're speaking to, this parity challenge it's a business challenge, so it requires business solutions. Everyone in here works for or is touched by the energy sector in some way. So what are some ways that you can recommend for us, here live in Houston, but of course globally across our virtual locations, that we can be doing maybe a bit more of to engage in these types of initiatives?
Well, there are so many ways, but I think first and foremost, the kind of opportunities that Pink Petro is giving to women, that's really, really important. I sometimes have women who say, well, I'm not getting involved in women's initiatives in my company because I don't want to be pegged or just seen as a female engineer or a female lawyer or a female whatever. And the truth is that none of us got here alone. We all stand on the shoulders of many, many other women who blazed trails before us. And we are now the trailblazers. We are now the people who will make the history for the next generation or set the platform for the next generation. And none of us can do it alone. And so I think really first and foremost, it is to be involved with groups like Pink Petro, to support them, to speak up for them, to speak up for a women's initiative in your company, to make sure that your organization is actually cognizant of the things that they are either that they're doing that cause women to decide they're going to bail out, because it's really easy. You see that happening all the time in male-dominated cultures. If you don't see somebody who looks like you, if the culture is such that you don't feel comfortable in it, most of the time women will just leave instead of trying to change it. And one of the things we do at Take the Lead that's different from most women's leadership programs is we actually incorporate how you can be a change leader yourself, how you can lead to the change that you think needs to happen. And so that's one thing, is if there are things that are happening in your company that you think are detrimental to women actually moving into the company and being able to give their best talents. And so many companies they're hungry to fill the talent pipeline. That's another reason this is a great moment for women, because we've been getting degrees in much higher percentages than men now for about 20 years. So, there are all kinds of reasons why this is a great moment for women. But we have to be willing to say that, to talk about it. At Take the Lead, we have something we call Sister Courage. So we have a hash mark, Sister Courage, and we talk about it all the time. And that's really what it boils down to: is be a sister, help another woman, ask for help when you need it. Don't isolate yourself. Make sure that you find your colleagues who feel the same kinds of issues and needs that you do, and then have the courage to raise conversations that need to be had with your peers or your company or your manager, and in a very positive way. I believe in being totally positive about it. This is not about breaking eggs just for the sake of it. It's to break an egg when you need to make an omelet and you have a purpose. And then finally, to get your facts together and have a strategy to move yourself forward or to help move other women forward together. So I really applaud Pink Petro for what you're doing, by the way. I think it's just absolutely fantastic.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. So we're very excited about it. So Gloria, and I'm gonna kind of poll the audience here too. Have you ever been to these women's conferences where it's you have to change this or you have to change that? One of the things that I know, just like you talked about the books, they define the problem, but there's no real solution. And we know that solutions come through systematic change and culture change. Where do you see this playing out, particularly on the backdrop of your the book, the 9 tools? What can we be doing to drive that systematic and culture change?
I think this is an especially relevant question at a time like this when the industry is in one of its down cycles, and that can be scary. And sometimes, I'd be curious if I were in the room, I'd like to get a count of how many people, when things feel like they're in conflict and chaos, what do you do? How many of you would sort of automatically back away, or just put your heads down and try to do the work at hand and not rock any boats? That's the normal human reaction, I have to say. We all try to be safe. We all want to be able to feel safe. But as Grace Hopper once said, a ship in port is safe, but that's not what ships are for. And that's one of my favorite sayings. I think we need to remember that innovation and creativity rarely happen in moments of stability. They happen in moments of chaos and change. And so, during the financial crisis, people would often say, what if Lehman Brothers had been Lehman sisters, or Lehman Brothers and sisters? Maybe things would have been different. Maybe there wouldn't have been quite the kind of financial meltdown that occurred. And it's kind of a joke, but it's not really. In moments of chaos, that is when people are open to new ideas, because they're trying to figure out how to keep the business going, how to move forward, how to create new products, how to find a way to repurpose the products you have so that people will utilize them in a different kind of way. So don't back away from chaos would be a big piece of advice I would give. It would be, look at it, be clear-eyed about it, but then find a way to walk into it and use its energy to help you propel forward, and help you think of new ideas and new ways to problem solve, and maybe even new questions to ask that end up creating new products or new services that will create a whole new market. I mean, this is not an example from the oil industry, but I was thinking about this the other day as I was racing through an airport. And I remember how many times I thought to myself, you know, while I'm waiting for this plane, I sure wish I could get a manicure. And as I saw an express spa as I was racing by, I thought, you know,
I love those.
somebody took that need and came up with an idea that is now making millions and millions of dollars. So there's always a way to think of something new, and that's the value of chaos and change.
So I think in your book, we call it Carpe the Chaos.
Carpe the chaos.
Carpe
Yes.
the Chaos. So write that one down. Carpe the Chaos. I actually talked about earlier when we opened the session, and I'll close in a little bit about why waste a good crisis. So between the two sayings there, I think we're pretty much saying the same thing. What else you got for Gloria?
Well, speaking of Carpe the Chaos, Gloria, I know our audience being comprised certainly of Pink Petro members and folks who are going to be checking out the community. We just announced today that we have some new functionality with the internal community, where if you're not yet a member, you can kind of navigate your way through and check out a few things that we've got going. So I think people will probably be a little bit eager. I know I'm eager to hear about some of your resources, some of the virtual offerings. I think there's something about virtual happy hours and sessions that take the lead offers and that people could plug into via your site, via Pink Petro, et cetera.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking that. There are a couple of things that I particularly want to just mention that are free, and we're delighted to provide them. One is we have a weekly newsletter that is a very quick read. In 5 minutes, you can get the latest scoops on what's happening in the world of women's leadership, and it spans every sector. It spans all kinds of things. It's fun, it's clever, and it's inspiring. And it's a really great read. I love it. I mean, people tell me that it's the one newsletter that when it hits their inbox, they actually open it and read it right away instead of putting it aside for another time. So you can get that on our website just by signing up for it. And our website is taketheleadwomen.com. Taketheleadwomen.com. And then the other thing we have that's available is our virtual happy hours. Our virtual happy hours are the second Wednesday of every month, and they are a live web chat, sort of like what I'm doing here with you all now. We have interesting people, interesting women so far. I think we're going to have some men later on this year. But we talk about a variety of different topics. And for example, we've had Gloria Steinem to talk about her life, and then we've had a journalist talking about how women are treated in the media. We've had entrepreneurs talk about how they started their businesses. We've had media people talk about that. So we've had a wide array of different topics and individuals. The next one is coming up next week, next Wednesday. I think that's March 9th, if I'm not mistaken. So March 9th, I will be interviewing Dr. Suzanne Steinbaum. As you may know, we're in March now, but February is Heart Month, and it's really carrying over until this month. I just went to a Go Red for Women lunch today. That's not why I have my red jacket on. It's just that I almost always wear red. But I went to the Heart Lunch today. So Dr. Steinbaum is the head of cardiology and women's health and women's cardiology at Lenox Hill Hospital here in New York. And she is a great expert, an amazing person to really inspire and motivate us to take care of ourselves. Because again, when we're talking about the world and chaos around us, we need to take care of ourselves. We need to know the signs of heart disease. Women have different signs than men do. Our health, if we have our health, then we can keep going on all these other things. And so that we don't usually do health-related programs, but next Wednesday at 6:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 Central Time, and so on, we will have the live virtual happy hour with Dr. Steinbaum, and you can sign up for that on our website too. When you sign up, if you're registered for it, It is free, but if you're registered for it, then if you can't watch it at that moment, we'll send you the link to it and you can see it later. But the value of signing up for it or the value of actually watching it live is that you can ask the speaker questions as we go. You can either tweet them in or you can write them into the chat box. And I just have to tell you, at the luncheon today, I want to show you what I got, and I'm still wearing them. So I'm going to just say to everybody, these are my Wonder Woman bracelets. And I just tell everybody to take a quick moment and get yourself into Wonder Woman pose and feel that strength and energy coming into you. It's a great thing. It's a great way to feel really good and to get yourself centered when you're in a moment of crisis and chaos.
Great.
I didn't finish answering your question. I always do that. I'm the world's worst salesperson. I'm the world's worst salesperson in the whole world. It's really terrible. But so I should actually just say quickly that we also offer a variety of other kinds of training programs, and you can poke around on our website. And in fact, we have a couple of giveaways in your virtual goodie bag today. So maybe that'll give you a chance to go take a look, including I'm raffling off one of my books of No Excuses. But I have an online leadership certificate course that we're talking about doing together collaboratively with Petro, and we're hoping to be able to do that. We do webinars, and so we have other kinds of learning programs and in-person and online events as well.
Well, we're really looking forward to the future and working with your organization. I'm really excited about the opportunity to connect the energy gender gap challenge with the broader challenge, and connecting to folks like yourself and Gloria Steinem and Sheryl Sandberg. I mean, wow, we're like getting kind of mainstream here, which is great. You know, being able to connect to just a wealth of resource to see the bigger picture and see how we, are part of that. And I think, as you talked about, this is a very unique time. It's actually an awesome time for women, and I think it's an awesome time for women in energy. So I'm very excited about working with you. I guess we'll just open it up and see if we have any questions for Gloria.
Great. I love questions.
Questions? Did we have any questions on the web? It's a tough crowd.
Did you wear them out today?
I think so. I mean, we talked policy, we talked environment, we talked with the media. We talked about the media. The media talked about us. We talked about, we've talked about technology. We talked. So, anyone have any questions? Oh, yes, absolutely. Volunteers are able to ask questions. Yes.
Hi, my name's Heather, and I was wondering, can you talk a little bit more about the struggles that you kind of alluded to, but you didn't really go into detail? You know, Karen McCullough earlier talked a little bit about how we really kind of gloss over the struggly part when you decide to go out on your own. So I wondered if you'd be willing to go into a little more detail on that.
Oh, Heather, that's a great question, and I think probably yes. So it's really funny because my career was not intentional. I spend a lot of time now advising women to be more intentional about the choices that we're making and about what are the goals we want to have. And when we look back 5 years, 10 years, whatever from now, what is it you want to have accomplished? I never did that. I really kind of said yes to the things that were before me, the opportunities that were before me. And in that sense, I let the locus of power stay outside of me, even though I held jobs that were very responsible, totally. I mean, I did things and accomplished things that people would say were impossible. And somehow I was able to make them happen because they needed to happen. But it was not an intentional career path for myself. So once I left that structured career, I really did kind of fall apart. And I guess I can tell you as much about the mistakes I made as about the things that I did that I think were the right things. In terms of the mistakes that I made, I think that I did not invest in myself sufficiently. And by that, I mean, I did not invest in counseling and coaching, which I think would have been extremely helpful to me to help me sort through all the feelings that I had, figure out what assets I had that I could bring to the table in a more specific and intentional way, and really help me position myself to move forward. I've been very lucky in my life that I've had many people who saw more capability in me than I saw in myself. And I realize that now, and I'm very grateful to them. But I sometimes think, what if I had recognized those skills and those talents myself? What might I have done instead of or in addition to what I did? So I do think it's great to be open to fortuity and to say yes to what's in front of us. But I'm telling you that probably the biggest mistake that I made in that transition was failing to invest literally financially in myself in order to figure out to have enough help and support to help me get through to what I wanted to do next and what would be the right thing for me next. So the thing that I think that I did was right was taking a break and giving myself some space. And really, it was good not to make any decisions immediately, because I had poured my heart and soul and everything I had into my work. And I was so passionate about it. I still am passionate about it, obviously, but I'm passionate about it now in a different framework, on a different canvas, and one that fits me better now. I realized at one point that actually the work I had done for Planned Parenthood was it had always been for me about women's equality. To me, that's what it was all about. And now I had an opportunity actually to address this bigger picture of women's equality. Equality in the workforce, equality in government, equality everywhere in society. And then I started getting really excited about it. So I probably would have reached the same conclusion if I had someone helping me along the path, but it would have been smarter for me to admit my vulnerability and my weaknesses and what I needed, and to have more help getting me to where I am now. So I guess that's the advice, the main advice I would give is, again, and it comes back to the treating yourself well. Take care of yourself and do the things that are going to be good for you to help you move forward.
Thanks, Gloria. We actually have a question from the web now from Michelle McGregor. What are some good leadership approaches for women in leadership positions who are experiencing crisis situations in their personal life, either something like an extremely sick child, a divorce, or taking care of a dying parent?
That's a tough one, and there's some interesting research that has come out recently that has discovered that one of the things that is the most likely to keep women in the workforce after they become mothers is not longer maternity leave, it's making sure the company has paternity leave. And what that does is it delivers the message that caregiving is everybody's responsibility, that there are two parents, and there are, and that we can all be nurturing and parenting. And so from a policy perspective, it's good, and I think a group like Pink Petro can help women to marshal the evidence that systemically it's really good, and it engenders loyalty, and it ultimately prevents a lot of dropout and expensive need for retraining when companies provide opportunities for anyone, men or women, who have those kinds of situations in their lives to be able to either adjust their hours to do some work remotely, to maybe take some leave and then come back. There are many ways of doing this. And one of the questions I always ask is, what do you think the organization would be like if women had created it? It's not like all of these family issues and caregiving issues and childbearing issues. These aren't new in human history. we would have figured out how to deal with it, and we can figure out how to deal with it now. So it's really hard, but it's something that is so worth doing, to think about it systemically and think about helping a company actually engender greater loyalty and less expense in retraining people by having policies that enable men and women to manage these family crises. It's good to start working on that and thinking about that, obviously, before a crisis occurs. When a crisis occurs, when you're already in that situation, then I think it's extremely important and valuable. And again, it might be helpful for you to actually role play this with a colleague first before you do it, but to go talk to your supervisor, your manager, and go in with a plan for how the work is going to get done. Go in with a plan for how either you'll be doing it or how you have a suggestion for how someone else could maybe step in on a part-time basis. Go in with a plan and negotiate what you think would really be a fit for you. And in the experiences that I've had in talking with women over time, I would say that at least 8 times out of 10, they're able to work something out to everybody's satisfaction. Because, you know, I mean, managers have those crises too, right?
Absolutely. Other questions? Oh, wow, great. Okay, we got one over there. Turn, let's see.
So I think that I've benefited tremendously over the last 8 years working for a male boss that not only views me as a competent employee, but understands that I might have challenges as a female in finance with a focus on oil and gas. And so I guess my question is, how do we approach this issue not only from empowering women, but getting men to understand the challenges that we face in the workplace and get them behind us and supporting us on this?
That's a great question. It's a really great question. You know, I mean, a bird has to fly on 2 wings, and in the same way, the world moves forward with men and women going forward together, and I think it's important. I've been talking with several people about this recently. It's important for all of us to have both male and female mentors and sponsors, I think, because you benefit from having both. And so that's number one, is I think proactively seeking the advice. Maybe it's a long-term mentorship, or maybe it's just a short-term piece of advice from men as well as women. It actually is a token of respect for people. Almost everybody will be willing to sit down with you and talk with you and build relationships with both men and women. Similarly, I think in any group, well, let me give you a very specific example, and excuse me. There you go. I'll give you a very specific example. My son, who actually is in the energy business, was asked to take on a special project a few years ago. And he kind of had a situation in reverse, because the person who tapped him was a female president of a company. And she had asked him to come over and work with her for 18 months to 2 years to do a particular project. And not surprisingly, if you think about it, as it turns out, as rare as female presidents are in the oil and gas business, in her case, she was there, and she had hired a number of her vice presidents were also female. So all of a sudden, he went from an almost all male culture to an almost all female culture. And he would ask me, "Mom, what do I do? I'm not sure how I can talk. I'm not sure what jokes are appropriate to tell. I'm not sure what behavior is exactly right." So I think, you know, the value is in a little role reversal is very, very helpful, and raising those conversations at times when they're not they're not argumentative, but just seeking answers, just asking questions, just asking, how do you think about this? How does it work for you? One thing that is really clear to me right now that is working in women's favor is that the current generation of young men tends to want many of the same things that the current generation of young women wants in their work life. So that in and of itself provides allies that we didn't have. But women have more at stake in raising those conversations and making sure that people do understand. And so because the men are still a little afraid to actually raise the conversations, because if they do, they're afraid they will be treated badly, or they'll be seen as being not tough enough, or whatever. All the men have as many stereotypes for themselves that they're dealing with as the women have that we're dealing with. So it's still up to the women, I think, to lead the opening of those conversations and having them. And again, I would reiterate, try to have them at moments when they're not crisis yet. Try to have them at moments when things are, when you can open a conversation and it's not a time when somebody might feel that they're being blamed for something that's gone wrong. That's what I would suggest. And while women do have many challenges that are special to us, men have many challenges that are special to them too, if you think about it. And so we can also indicate that we understand that and be empathetic and sympathetic with them. And finally, I guess it would just be all of us just need to be able to be authentic, be authentically ourselves. And if we're authentic and we speak our truth, we're probably going to be treated like we want to be treated, and we're probably going to get most of what we need in the workplace.
Hi, so I'm Diana Petro. I was one of the energy students that came up and spoke. So my question was, coming in from Planned Parenthood, knowing that there's so much controversy surrounding that company, what piece of advice would you give us starting in with this industry, knowing that there's so much controversy within the industry and dealing with that in today's world, knowing that the media kind of runs everything?
Mm-hmm.
Brave question.
We do live in a mediated society. That is true. And we don't always have control over how things get presented and said. And actually, if you look at my 9 power tools, the first one is appropriate for Women's History Month, which starts today, and that's know your history and you can create the future of your choice. But the second one is define your own terms first before anyone else defines you. And that gets to a couple of things that I will share with you. The first is know who you are. One of the power tools is called wear the shirt. And what that means is know what your beliefs, your deeply held beliefs and your values are. Be clear about those first. If you know who you are and you know what you believe, then it gets to be a whole lot easier to manage in times of controversy. And then if you think proactively about what is the image that I want to present and what is the message that I want to give, if I were preparing for a media interview, I would go into it with already knowing in my mind, what are the 3 messages, no more than 3, and probably it would just be 1, given the short attention span people have today, that I want to make absolutely certain people hear. Don't try to explain it all. Have 3 simple things that you say, and you say it. You do not have to answer the question as asked. You can always respond to the question in some way, but then you can then move on and you can answer the question that you think should have been asked. And I mean, that's a tip for the media, but it's also a tip just for a cocktail party conversation, or for controversial things that come up in the office, as they sometimes do. Be clear about who you are. Know what you believe. Know what your most deeply held values are. And those ultimately are that's the most important thing you have, is who you are and what you believe at your core. Know that. And if you have that, then you have the courage to speak what is your truth. And and that sounds really simple and maybe a little trite, but I truly believe that, and I found that to happen over and over and over again, and that people, even people who disagreed with me really, really strongly, unless they were real whack jobs and nutcases, of which I encountered plenty, believe me. But the majority of people, the overwhelming majority of people, even if they believed differently than I believed, respected me and I respected them. We each knew what our core values were and we could speak to them in an intelligent way. And you could have a conversation even if you had to agree to disagree. That's perfectly all right. That's why we live in America. That's why we live in a democracy, so we can agree to disagree. And the final thing I'll say that I learned about controversy is that, and I alluded to this previously, is that controversy is ultimately your friend if there is something you're trying to accomplish. Because when an issue is controversial, it means it's important to other people too. It gives you a platform because they're paying attention to you. You get a chance to teach. You get a chance to share what you do believe and why you have the opinion that you have. And I guess I learned that over time that everybody's just trying to live a good life and be a good person. And of course there are exceptions to that rule too, but for the most part, everybody wants the same thing, and they want the same thing for be able to provide for their families. They want to be able to, to have a good life for their children. We all pretty much want the same thing. We may approach it differently, but we have to have the courage to actually talk about those issues that are controversial, because if we don't talk about them, then there are never any solutions. The society just keeps on being contentious. And if you really engage in issues and controversy, you can start to move an issue forward. And while it may be frightening at first, we grow our courage muscles like we grow our physical muscles by using them. So the more you actually do engage in those conversations, the stronger you are able to become, and the more they don't frighten you anymore. And you don't back off anymore. But you know how to do it in a way that's positive. And if we had a lot of time here, I could actually cite you a lot of cases where over the years, people have changed their tune and have come back to me and said, I've decided you were right. I didn't have to force them. I didn't have to press them. I didn't have to push them. Everybody has to come to those beliefs on their own. And so that's how I look at it, and it's a slow process, but it is really what democracy is all about. I don't really think we can have a secure democracy if we are unwilling to have controversy. I think to engage in controversy is absolutely essential to having American democracy survive. I think it's that important.
Thank you so much for coming today and participating via Skype. We really appreciate you making the time, and I'm looking forward to the certificate class and some of the leadership development work we're talking about doing with Take the Lead Women. And I think we're done with this panel, or we're done with this segment. Thank you very much.
So much.
Yes.
Ladies, keep on taking the lead.
All right. Take care, Gloria.
Bye.
Okay.